Today I'm going to show you how to play the Vienna like a 2000 rated over-the-board chess player as we continue our climb to 2000 elo on the rapid chess speedrun. Very, very close, 64 elo away, so potentially not that many episodes to go, depending on how we fare against our opponents. And here, after knight to f6, we can play the Vienna Gambit with f4. My opponent just said that he watches the channel, so thank you very much. That's very cool, very, very cool. And I initially learned this opening from GothamChess, a GothamChess course that I bought, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It was a long time ago. And I still use it. I've been using it for years with success online, over the board. And a lot of people think that the Vienna is kind of tricks-based and it's not actually usable above like a certain elo range. And that will be true for like grandmasters, of course. But I've used this against like FIDE masters, national masters, 2200 like over the board classical players in rapid and classical chess, and I've had great success with it. And my opponent is playing one of the main lines. Here we need to pin this knight because we cannot allow this. I'm just going to drop my opponent a message quickly. And okay, so he takes. It looks like he probably knows the theory. And here we have two choices. So we can either take with the b pawn and try to go for d4. If I take with the b pawn, most likely we're going to see queen to h4 check, g3, and queen to e4 check, going for a queen trade. And after something like take, 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 we have an interesting position. I'm not sure how easy it is to get anything out of it, though. Alternatively, we can take with the d pawn, and if my opponent goes for the same queen trade idea with queen to h4 check, pawn g3, queen e4 check, take, take, then the benefit is that we can get our dark squared bishop out more quickly, and we can castle queenside if we want to get our rook on the d file. Of course, we'll most likely take as well. So either is okay in this position. I think I'm going to go for d takes, just because I play b takes c3 most of the time, but I found myself feeling a little bit uncomfortable in the positions that follow. So I think I prefer this. And I believe we should be taking this to ruin the structure before black has time to go bishop to d7. And the problem with bishop d7 as well is that even if we play a move like bishop to f4, defending e5, then black can still take. And if we take, then take. And if we take on d7, then knight takes d7. And I think we can win the c7 pawn there. But I don't know. It's a weird position. But okay, let's ruin the structure. And then I think bishop to e3 is the best square for the bishop. With the idea being that we're stopping bishop to c5, which looks like the most active diagonal for the dark squared bishop for black. So here, black has the advantage in the sense of having the bishop pair, but we probably have a better pawn structure. We both have isolated e-pawns in each other's territory. Like, normally they'd be the other way round. Like, we'd have a pawn on e4, they'd have a pawn on e5, but it's the other way around, which looks really weird. But okay, h5, interesting. I suppose going for h4. I think I'm just going to ignore that and play knight e2. Knight e2, h4, castle queenside. Bishop g4, rook d2. Bishop f3, rook g1. That's kind of annoying. What about h3? So h4 can be met with g4. And then there's no bishop g4. I think that makes sense. Also, if he's trying to play h4, so he can play rook to h5 to go after the pawn, then we're also stopping that because g4 controls the h5 square. He does go for it. Okay, that's very interesting. Well, I don't know. This looks alright for us because my opponent's got the bishop pair, right? So theoretically, closing the position should be good for us. So, for example, locking these pawns together should be good for us because it keeps the position more closed, which is better for our knight because knights operate better in closed positions and bishops operate better in open positions. So the more closed the position, in theory, the better our knight can be in comparison to my opponent's bishops. Hopefully that makes sense. So I suppose castle queenside, knight e2, our knight has decent prospects. Black could potentially try g6, bishop g7 to go after the e5 pawn. If g6, knight e2, bishop g7, do we want to play something like bishop d4 defending? I don't know. Should we? Should we? It just feels kind of passive. Okay, bishop e6. Interesting. So if we castle queenside, I assume the idea is bishop takes a2. And if pawn b3 trying to play king b2, then bishop a3 check forces the king to d2. The bishop is still trapped, though. And we're threatening rook to a1 to pick up the bishop. So if bishop b2, stopping rook to a1, that is playable, but it looks wrong somehow. I mean, we could potentially even play a move like knight to e2 to try and play rook a1, bishop takes, rook takes, and then win the bishop. Alternatively, we could just develop and not go into any of that, which is, I think, what I would prefer to do. We could always castle kingside as well. There's no reason for us to have to go queenside, particularly with this open file against our king. Maybe it's better to go kingside. Even though the kingside looks quite open, I don't think it actually is, because we've locked down the h-pawn. This g-pawn isn't going to do anything. This f-pawn is going to get taken if it does anything. c5 stops knight to d4. Makes sense. What if we go knight to f4? You can't let me take that bishop. Can't let me take it. Because then your structure is horrific. And that's got to be good for us. And we also have the same coloured bishop in that line. So, you know, if, for example, I were to trade this knight for this bishop, then the opposite coloured bishops probably mean a draw in the future. Alternatively, we could just castle kingside. But, I don't know, g6, bishop, g7 still looks quite good. Although, because he pushed c5, that would hang the c-pawn. Although he would win back the e-pawn, which is probably a good trade for black. So, okay. I don't see a reason not to play knight f4. If king to d7, trying to guard the bishop, then I just deliver a check. And if you go to e7, you block in your dark squared bishop and lose c5. And then I take this bishop anyway. So I don't see a reason not to play this move. We also have access to the h5 square if we want to put pressure on g7 and f6 to potentially discourage a move like g6 because of knight to f6 check. And then the king is not the happiest piece on the board. We could also pick up the e4 pawn if that happens. What's quite interesting about these positions as well is that with the pawns in each other's territories like this, they ought to be very flimsy and very vulnerable. But it's actually not that easy to take them. I mean, for us, you know, we can't target this e-pawn with our bishop. We have to do it with the knight. But I mean, how does the knight even target it? It can't go to g3 or c3, right? So, like, where does it go? Like, f2? How does it even get to f2? d2? Well, we can't put it on d2 because we couldn't go to f3 to go to d2 because the pawn controls f3. So it makes for some very strange positions where the pawns are more stable than they look. Ooh, bishop c4, that looks off. I mean, b3 is the first move that comes to mind, kicking the bishop away. And then, I don't know, like knight d5, going after c7, looks very strong. Even b3, c4 potentially to lock the bishop out and again close the position further, which ought to be good for us. because, like I said, it benefits our knight versus his bishop pair. So I'm going to go b3. If bishop b5, c4 makes sense, but then, I don't know, bishop to c6, and if knight in, take, is that good for us? I don't know. So should we play this first, before we play c4, so that he doesn't have the option of taking the knight? So if knight d5, c7's a problem. Let's say rook c8. If a move like king to d8, I mean, for a starter, we could play bishop g5 check, but we could also castle queenside with threats of discovered checks, so you'd have to move the king again. And then, I don't know, c4, bishop c6. The black position just doesn't look very happy. I could even just bring my knight back out of the position and say he's got a bad bishop, which he probably does. He's locked in by his own pawn. It's interesting. It's interesting. What if we go pawn e6? Or even c4, bishop c6, pawn e6, trying to trade off our weakness. If g5, trying to kick my knight away, I take with check, and then I play a move like knight to h5, and that looks very good for us. So c4, bishop c6, c6, let's say f6, stopping us from trading. If knight g6, rook g8, well then I win h4, and I come into f5, and it looks very good. So here, let's say rook h7, keeping an eye on the pawn. Well, then I take here and here, maybe? But then we do have opposite colored bishops, and I'm not sure if I want that. Also, with knight d5, king d8 doesn't have to be played. He could go rook c8. I'm not sure what I'm getting there. Like, I could go c4, bishop c6, queenside castle. He can't play g6 because of knight to f6 check. So, bishop e7. And then again, I do have the option to take, but do I want to play opposite colored bishops? I don't know. I feel like this is the way to go. It's between e6 and knight to d5, but again, I'm thinking that although I'd like to trade off my e-pawn because it could be a weakness, as I was mentioning before, it's actually really hard for black to go after my e5 pawn. It's really not easy, so it feels unnecessary to trade it off. So let's go c4 to stop black from playing c4 and opening up the bishop and trying to ruin my structure. Also, we don't have a light squared bishop, so the fact that we have a lot of pawns on light squares complements our dark squared bishop quite nicely. Bishop c6, I suppose we just queenside castle. Maybe rook to f1, and I mean, I don't see a win, but we have to be better. We have to be better here. I mean, the black pieces are just miserable. He can't develop properly. And I think this is one of the very interesting things about the Vienna as well, because a lot of people with black, which is what I assume my opponent's done, has memorized this theory up to here, right? He's memorized this, and he's gone, okay, we've got an equal endgame, and if white chooses to take, which I do, then black has the bishop pair, and he can create counterplay. But the game isn't over by any means. Just because the queens are off the board and a couple of pieces have been traded does not mean that it's a draw. Far from it. Far, far from it. Because now the game begins. And these are the types of positions that a lot of people struggle with, myself included. It's not easy to play these types of positions. But to apply persistent and consistent pressure to the position will eventually force mistakes out of your opponent. Like, that's just a fact. Okay, f6, well, no. Surely you can't play that. Surely not. No, this is just losing, no? This has to be losing. Because king e7, bishop c5. Did I play that too quickly? I don't think so. King e6. I can't give another check. But I mean, bishop d4 looks good. Sorry, no, my bishop's under attack. I could take on a7. And if here, then that's just not playable. So, okay, this isn't a threat. This isn't a threat. E3 will come with a discovered attack, bear in mind. Taking feels wrong. Taking just feels wrong. If here, 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 he's got to retreat the rook. So let's say rook a6 to allow a double up in the future. Maybe just knight to d5 in some lines. I mean, theoretically, I can take and then play knight d5. But then I'm going to lose my e-pawn, and I'm not sure if I'm better there. I don't want to lose my e-pawn. I don't know, I'm feeling like I probably shouldn't have taken now. But if I play a move like bishop g5, which was my other consideration, then still king e6, I can't stop the king from going to e6, and I have no way of checking the king on e6, so this has to be the best line. Gotta be. Okay, this is an important moment. Bishop a7, rook a8. Bishop e3. Maybe bishop e3 is better, because we stop the pawn from advancing. And again, if take, then check with discovered attacks looks very good. If rook a1, then king b2. Sorry, if rook a2, then king b1. If bishop to a3, then king b1. That's fine. Yeah, that's all good. I think we should just take. And I think our king is safe enough. As long as we don't get mated here, worst case scenario, we're up a pawn. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, please drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I think like 60% of you who watch are not subscribed, which is not cool. Not cool. Just subscribe. Anyway, self-plug over. At least I waited like a good 18 minutes, so that's respectable. Okay, so rook a8, I mean, surely that's the move. Because if you don't play rook a8, I play a4. And then you never win any of these pawns, and I have an outside passed pawn, and I'm up 2 pawns. So rook a8 looks forced to me. I have no way of defending my bishop. So rook a8, bishop e3, rook a2, king b1, rook a6. I'm saying rook a6 because the rook can't be targeted by any of my pieces on a6 because it's on a light square. And if he manages to get this bishop out, he's preparing to double up. That's why I'm saying rook to a6. But check. Not a move I considered, but is he trying to push? Or stop bishop e3? I mean, I can just come to c5 now, so I don't get it. Pawn e3, rook e1, I guess? If rook d8, rook d8, rook d8, bishop e3, bishop e3, rook e3, yeah, I don't know. Bishop f3? Oh, okay. So if rook takes, then bishop f3 with a skewer. Interesting. And if I play rook to d3, stopping bishop to f3, also if take, I still have the bishop to d4 move. then how are you stopping rook takes e2? If rook d3, rook d8, my rook's defended, so I can just take. Take. I'm up 3 pawns, right? I mean, maybe he can win the e5 pawn in that line. But my knight always has d5 or e4. So that's okay. I don't see a problem with this. And, I mean, there's just no way for black to defend e2. Sorry about that. There's just no way to defend e2 by the looks of it. Like I said, he could win e5, but not just yet. He's got to be patient. Because if he does it straight away, then bishop d4, king back. And, I don't know, maybe rook takes with check, and the king is just completely dead. Like, I will either get a discovery against this rook, or I'll just mate him. Or there'll just be some kind of mate. So you can't be taking anytime soon. So, okay, rook d8 looks like the only move to me. Rook d8. In fact, I don't even have to take on e2 there. If rook d8, I can take on d8. And after rook d8, rook e2, all my problems are solved. There's no bishop g2. There's no king to e5. That's defended, that's defended. I don't have a weak d3 pawn. If rook d1, then king to b2. If bishop to c1, king to c3. There's no bishop to d2 check because my rook and king control that square. I will play a4, and then all my pawns will be safe. And I can just start rolling the queenside pawns, or even go after some of black's remaining pawns. The bishop pair will be a little bit powerful in that line, but not enough, I don't think. So let's do it. This is what I was just calculating, which is why you should always calculate forcing lines in your opponent's turn, by the way, if there's clearly forcing lines to be calculated, because I now don't have to waste my time. After rook to d8 from my opponent, I immediately know what I want to do. I don't have to go through another round of calculation, because I'd considered what happens if I take on e2, and if rook d3 and cd3. Oh no, there's no king to e5 there. Oh, maybe I should have gone for that. I'm sure there was something else I was looking at, but whatever. I don't think it matters, because we calculated this exact line and came to the conclusion this has to be good for us. It must be. It must be. And, yeah, I mean, I suppose there's rook to h1, which I didn't consider. Oh, that's interesting. Let me think. Knight e4 is interesting, because if take, then check. Oh, no, sorry, the bishop covers that square. That's a lie. I don't have rook e3, of course. I'm trying to find a way to get the king off of e6. What about knight h7? Rook h... Oh, no, rook h3 comes with check, though. That's gross. Yeah, this is where the bishop pair is very powerful. Annoyingly so. What if I just push? What if I just push? Check. And, I don't know. King b4. And I just try to push. Let's say rook e3. No, sorry, my bishop covers e3. Let's say rook f3. Or rook g3, maybe? Yeah. trying to push the pawn. And then I push. I don't know. It's kind of difficult to get through because the bishop covers a8. A little bit annoying. Trying to be as accurate as possible. But yeah, on reflection, I probably shouldn't have taken on d8. I probably should have taken on e2 and allowed the trade on d3. For some reason, I thought there was a problem with that. I don't know what I was hallucinating. If bishop e3, which is the move I want to play, then rook h3 pins the bishop, which looks problematic. Yeah, that does look problematic. There's also ideas of bishop f3 dislodging my rook. So that doesn't feel right. What else can I play? What about b4? Here. Here. And there's bishop b2, though, which is very annoying. My king actually doesn't have many squares. So we can scrap that. I want to go to b4, I think. Okay, what about... Bloody hell. Massive lie. Go away. What else can we do? My knight just doesn't have good moves. That's the frustrating part. That doesn't work. No. I suppose we should just push. I can't think of anything else. My king is compromised, so I need to have the b4 square. And then maybe I can bring the king to c5. But I'm just thinking, well, something like bishop a8, and I mean... Well, maybe actually if king c5, bishop a8, I have knight to d5. But I need to get my dark-squared bishop out of the position first, because otherwise I'm blocking its maneuverability. Although, perhaps, after I move like rook g3... Okay, maybe not rook g3 because of bishop f2. Okay, rook h1, sure. Maybe I can just go bishop to b8. Going after c7, which you can't defend. Because the king can't help. I mean, you're going to push, sure. I don't know if I can stop that. I mean, I could try this, but... I don't know if it's good enough. Alternatively, I can go for the immediate king c5, but then it's even just bishop to f3. I'm not sure what I'm doing there. Bishop e3 looks wrong. Take, push. I mean, I just don't have a good way of stopping the pawn. Here. Maybe I can just go after his king. Rook f2. Bishop b7. Oh no, there's bishop e3 check. There's bishop e3 check. That's a problem. Bishop d4. Push. No, I can't allow that. Bishop f2, rook h2. That looks wrong. Maybe g4. And knight to g4, but then bishop f3. Also just bishop takes. Bishop e3, bishop e3, rook e3, h3. That's just no good. It's just no good. Can't do that. Maybe knight d5. Hold on, maybe knight d5. I think this might be my only way to block this bishop. Because that bishop is very important. That's the only move I can see that makes sense. And I'm also low on time, so I need to move. Okay. I don't know if that was a good move, but we're playing it. I think a rook trade makes sense now. Sorry, a bishop trade makes sense now. Now we've gotten rid of his light squared bishop. Because I feel like the rook endgame should be winning. Because my king is always shielded from his rook checks, followed by promotion. And I can just push my pawns. Yeah, I don't know if this works. Like, king c5? Push here, take. Push. How's he stopping that? King in, maybe? So maybe I just need to push immediately. And just get going. h2, rook h3, king e5, a6, rook a1. Yeah, I can't do that. So I need to start with king to b5 or something. Alternatively, rook e2 also keeps the king out of the game. The king has no access. I cover this, 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 this. And f7's covered. If the rook moves, then I obviously take. Yeah, so he brings the king back, but that can't be good. Now, I need to make sure his rook can't move with check. That's crucial, otherwise I lose. Because if the rook can move with check... Oh, have I just allowed this? This should still be good, though. Here, here, here. Maybe I should have gone king b5. But if rook a1, rook h2, rook a5, king d4, rook a3, push, only we can win? Rook g3 is annoying, admittedly. So perhaps instead of pawn b4, we can play something like rook to h3 to guard the pawn. Yeah, this feels like it should be good, but yeah, I did just allow that. Okay, let's take. This is guarded. That's a good move. Does that allow rook h8? Because if take, then I have a skewer. If rook h8, c5, king e4, rook a3, rook b8, or even a check first and then rook b8, followed by king d5, looks good. This looks nice. There's no rook there's no rook e4 check, rook d5 check, king e4, and then rook to e5 with check, which is very important because that would be good for black. Okay, well that's just game over. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, there we go. And eventually the blunder is made. Eventually the blunder is made, and this is what I was saying earlier. Like, these positions look dead. Even here, it looks like, oh, okay, white's up a pawn, but his pawns are very split. One of them will probably fall, and then it'll probably be a draw. But even if the computer says it's a draw with perfect play, I mean, do you really expect your opponent to have perfect play? No matter who they are. Even, you know, a grandmaster would play imperfectly, because there's still complications in this position. Now, would a grandmaster blunder their rook like this? No. Would a 1900 blunder their rook like this? Well, clearly, yeah. Even with lots of time left on the clock. And no offense to anyone, but like the majority of you watching are not 1900. So you have no excuse. You know what I mean? Like, you should keep fighting in these positions and keep creating opportunities to win. And I mean, okay, if black doesn't take here, and he resigns, yeah. If black doesn't take and blunder the rook, I mean, what does black do? Are we better? Well, computer says like plus 0.6, so we're the only side that can win. But yeah, let's jump into the analysis and see what the computer has to say. Okay, so 84.3% accuracy for us, 78.8 for our opponent. A lot of mistakes made in that game. A lot of good moves, but a lot of mistakes. So let's have a look. E4, E5, Knight C3, Knight F6, and F4, the Vienna Gambit. I have a full guide to the Vienna Game / Vienna Gambit on my channel. So check that out if you're interested. I get a lot of people who watch it many times over because it just helps to refresh your knowledge of the different lines. So highly recommend. But D5, take, Queen F3. This is all very standard. In this position, black kind of has three options. Either he can take on C3, he can play pawn to F5, or knight to C6. Everything else is not great, although bishop E6 is actually quite a nice trappy line. I remember I actually lost to a subscriber in when I was doing a live challenges versus viewer live stream, because this is a really tricky line, actually. So yeah, I'll let you explore that in your own time if you're interested. Or I can cover it in a future video if you want. But knight c6, bishop b5, pinning the knight. Here you can't really take on e4 because of knight d4, with attacks on c2 and the queen, and you can lose very quickly after something like queen d3, which looks natural, but it's completely losing because of this. But yeah, we go bishop b5, pinning the knight, knight c3, and here bc3 is a move, but dc3 is better. And the reason I used to play b takes is because I was basically just hoping my opponent wouldn't play queen h4, and I'd get to play d4 and have this very nice pawn chain. But the problem is he can just go queen to h4. And here the position is bad because we can't get our bishop out properly. That's the issue. So if we go for the same sort of thing with like take, there's no bishop e3, so after like knight to e2, black just has a far better time in this position because we're way less active. For example, rook to b8, and our b file is quite weak, whereas after d takes c3, the b file is not weak because, as we saw in the game, it was perfectly fine. But queen h4, g3, queen e4, take. The position is completely equal. Bishop c6, bc6, and bishop to e3, knight e2 slightly better, but I didn't want to allow bishop c5. Oh, but there is knight d4. But then we're kind of just offering a draw. This is a draw offer, because now it's opposite colored bishops, and there is nowhere near enough play for either side to win this, realistically. I don't want to draw. So bishop e3. Here, h5 is actually the best move. That's very interesting. h3 is the best response. I wanted to play something like castle queenside, but I was like, I don't know. Bishop g4 just looks problematic. And I was thinking like rook d2. What was I thinking? Like, I don't know, h4. This is just not fun. This is not a fun position. But even, let's say bishop e7 and something like knight e2, this still felt wrong. After something like bishop to f3, computer isn't impressed, but it just didn't feel right. So I went h3, which is best. And after h4, we can now push g4. Here I was expecting g6, which felt very natural. Try and go bishop to g7 to go after the pawn. And here something like knight e2, bishop g7, bishop f4, castles. And it's an interesting game, right? It's a very interesting position. I'm holding on to the e-pawn for now, but can I keep a hold of it? Probably not. I probably have to try to counterattack. But there's still chess to be played, right? This is definitely not done. Like, the game isn't over. And obviously, I have just played 7 moves off of what was played in the game. So who's to say either of us find all these moves? But bishop e6 kind of confused me because it felt unnecessary. Knight e2 is best. c5, again, felt strange. I was like, well, again, g6 I thought would be played, which is one of the best moves. And after knight f4, I did think he would probably move the bishop, because if he goes bishop g7, I mean, take just looked horrific. I just did not think this was viable whatsoever. And we could even just sack the e5 pawn, and we are much better here, because the black pawns are just so bad. They're just all completely split. But c5, knight f4, going after the bishop to c4 is a mistake. I was expecting bishop d7, which is the best move. And here c4 is still the best move, stopping black from going c4, I assume. But bishop c4, b3, bishop b5. Knight d5 is good. c4 is also playable. Rook c8. c4 is the best move. Bishop c6. Castle queenside is perfectly fine. The engine here wants black to take on d5, but I mean, this just feels like there's zero hope in the position for black. Although the engine says this is the best line, I mean, it's effectively resignation in my eyes. Because, I don't know, a5, c4. Okay, c4 is apparently not that good. Rook hf1, but I mean, we just have these... Oh, it wants to go after the e-pawn, right. a4, d6, take. I mean, how does black hold on? Rook d8, bishop c5. I mean, we have 3 connected passed pawns, and black can't even castle. He's playing with, like, 2 pieces. So, you know, bishop d5 makes no sense. So g6, I thought was a decent move. Knight f6 check isn't actually that good. That's interesting. Better is rook hf1, and if bishop g7, we trade the pawns, and then just go after this. Huh. And then we effectively keep the black rooks out of the game by not committing and not letting him castle. Knight f6, king e7. Here I regretted bishop takes c5. It's not the best move. Best is rook hf1. The problem with bishop c5 is we allow pawn e3, right? And then the black pieces kind of come alive, as we saw in the game. After bishop g7 here, bishop g5, king e6 to stop the discoveries. Rook d to e1. We're going to win this unless black trades, but then he's probably losing. I mean, yeah, this just is probably untenable. Even with opposite coloured bishops, we'll probably have too much activity with the 2 rooks still on the board and the black pawns being so bad. But I take on c5, king e6 only move. Here, the engine wants to take. Really? And then rook f1. Save rook d8. Then it wants knight h7. What's wrong with just taking the pawn? What am I missing? g5. Okay, let's say you just come back. Rook d to e1. Okay. Let's say you go back. I don't know. Rook d... Okay, what? Excuse me? Why are we repeating? Okay, now it comes up with c3. What is c3? Rook d8? Knight g4 is apparently completely winning. Oh, okay, that's really nice. Yeah. Okay. I took on a7, and this is not good. And bishop h6 is the only move, and I completely missed bishop h6. I was expecting rook to a8, and here I was going to go bishop e3, and if rook a2, then something like king b1, even though king b1 isn't the best. Knight e5 is better. Because if here, I just come here. Oh, yeah, of course. I don't have to go king b1. But what happens if I do? I thought rook a6 was good. Apparently not. Rook a5 is the only move. Going after the e-pawn. And then it's drawing. So why is knight d5 so important? Well, if take, then, you know, connected passes, and you can't do this because of this. And if the king goes back, we just roll forward, I suppose. Bishop f6, rook g8. Now king b1, and now if rook a5, we're going to be up 2 pawns. Yeah, okay, that's got to be winning. And also the h-pawn is hanging. Okay. But what if he doesn't take? What if... Okay, he can't do this because of this. What if he goes bishop g7? Okay, then c7 hangs. And he can't... Oh, he can't defend c7. Ah, so the only way to defend is to take, but that gives us connected passes. And if after we come back and taking king b1, then he has time for rook a5. And now if knight d5, then have to take, he can take. Okay, that's really interesting. So king b1 is a waste of time. But bishop h6 is the best move. King b1, e3 is a mistake, though. Rook hd8 or rook cd8 were the only tries. e3, rook hg1. e2, rook d3 is the best move by a country mile. Because if this, then this. And we're still better, but, you know, going down the exchange isn't ideal. Rook d3 stops this. Sorry, stops this. Rook here, I completely regret this. I should have just done this. And then, if take, I have no problems. If you come onto the d-file, I can just go d4, supported by the bishop, or even king c2. And if rook a8... Okay, the engine finds d4 to sack this to play d5, which is very cute. And, oh, then we have a nice little fork as well. I don't know if I would have seen that, but even if we don't have the fork, it still looks very good. I don't know why I was concerned about this. I think for some reason I thought after rook d8, king c2 that he could take on e5. I don't know why I thought that, but I just thought he could. But yeah, taking is not good. Rook e2, rook d1, king b2, bishop c1, king c3. And here, a4 is a mistake. I need to go for the immediate knight d5, which I later found. Because I need to keep this bishop out of the game. And if take. Now king b4, rook h3. King b5? What? Let's say rook h1. And then we start pushing. This is kind of what just happened in the game. I went a4. Why is it different? Oh, because the bishop gets away from knight d5. Right. Or here first, and then the bishop gets away. So knight d5 doesn't block it. But he doesn't do that. And then I get to keep the bishop out of the game. That's the big problem. So he takes. Take. King d5. c4 check. King e6. Bishop e3 is a mistake. a5 is best. And after h3. Now bishop e3. Okay, what's the difference? Take. h2. Rook e2. Okay. This is the same position we had in the game, though, but through a different move order. So what's wrong with this? Take. Oh, h3 is the mistake. Rook g1. Oh, right. And if I come here, then you take and defend. And if I come here, then you push, and I can't take. Ah, okay. But he goes h3, which allows a5. After h2, rook e2 is the best move. Now, rook h3 is not good, because king e5 and the king comes in. So rook e2 has to be played to keep the king away, because we keep an eye on e5. King d7. Here, king c5 I wasn't happy with. If I could take it back, I maybe would have played king b5. The engine actually likes my move, though. Rook a1. Oh, that I should have given a check first. Why? Here. Oh, I don't come here, I come here. And if take, then take. And the pawns roll. Okay. Here, king d4, king e6. Here I went rook h8. That's a mistake. The best move is c5. I considered c5. I did, blocking the rook's scope. However, I felt like I was weakening the pawns. If there's something like rook a3... Oh, I just have rook h3, yeah. Huh. And there's no rook a4 because the pawn controls that square. And if rook b5, king c4 with tempo, so you don't have time to take. Let's say rook back. Now rook f2 counter-attacking, so if take then take with pressure on c7. I went rook h8. Here, the only move for black is c5, which I considered. But I thought after king e4 and rook a3, I had rook b8, and this is completely winning. This is what I calculated. What black needs to find, though, is rook a1, using my own tricks against me. And if rook e8, king d7, rook b8, there's only one drawing move, and it's rook d1 to stop king to d5. Because if king e6, then rook b6, king e7, and king d5, and bye-bye c-pawn. So, although the computer says rook to h8 is a mistake, there's like one path to a draw for black, and it's so specific that a human is not really going to find it. Even in an over-the-board classical game, I mean, I don't even know if a national or FIDE master would hold perfectly. You know, this is just so difficult. So none of you should be worried about like winning a position like this in terms of your opponent defending perfectly. They will make mistakes. Of course, my opponent makes my life very easy. And this was the whole point. And then he resigns because the king moves and I take, and c5 doesn't do anything. It's just game over. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. GG to my opponent. I assume he'll be watching this video, considering he said he watches the channel. So shout out to you. Very well played. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you want to check out that full Vienna guide that I was referencing earlier, it's right up here. So you can learn to play the Vienna for yourself. With basically all the lines covered. Although there are a few missing, so I don't know whether I should make an updated version or not, but who knows. And if you want to see the previous episodes of the speedrun playlist down there, go check it out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in one of those.